make an entryway bench with shoe storage to replace this hodgepodge of stuff I got going on here. Most of this stuff was just found either at a garage sale or on the side of the road, and so I'm gonna replace it with something that looks better, and then eventually I'll have a rack that goes above it for coats and other decorative stuff. Really, for me, the hardest part of most projects is deciding what I want to build or designing it. It's not really building it, it's figuring out what it is I'm gonna build, and because I gotta decide, okay, I can do this, it's not gonna take forever, and it's gonna look good in that space. And I normally go to Pinterest and check things out and get a few ideas and adapt something I see there. So this time I ran across Anna White. She had done a bench, and I thought, okay, I could pretty much use this idea and just change it up a little bit to fit my space. Anytime I make a larger project now, I like to try to use SketchUp if I can. I'm not super awesome with it, but if it's a pretty basic thing like I'm making here, I can do it, and it just helps me make sure I have all the measurements right, and when I go out to cut the wood, I'm not going to end up wasting a lot because I'm messing up so much. If you want the SketchUp plans, I'm going to include those in the link below, so you can check it out and play around with it if you want. The nice thing about this project is I just used 12-inch pine boards. So for the most part, I only had to cut the boards to the correct length. I didn't have to rip very many parts down to a smaller width. If you notice in the final design, the middle sections are slightly wider. They're 20 inches wide as opposed to 12 inches wide. So to do that, I ripped down 2 boards to 10 inches each. Now all I had to do was put the 2 boards together, mark a spot where I would use my biscuit joiner and make sure to mark that across both boards. Then I got my biscuit joiner out and I cut those holes, and now I was ready to glue it up and clamp them together. I always use more glue than I think I need, and I make sure I put glue in each one of the biscuit holes, and that way when I clamp it together the glue comes oozing out, so I know there's plenty on there, and I just wipe it off with a wet rag.
When is it going to be done drawing?
What?
When is singing making going to be done drawing?
What's drying?
The touch flag. The touch flag and what I'm setting.
Oh, the flag. And you're using your butt to clamp it down?
Yes.
Good idea. That's a good idea. Probably like 10 minutes. Sit there for 10 minutes. At this point, I've cut everything I need for the project except for the shelves. These are the bottom support pieces, and these are just 3-inch boards you get at Home Depot or Lowe's, and I think they're 2.5 inches actually, but they're marked as 3 inches. So then once you get those, these bottom pieces you just screw into the side, and I'm using pocket screws as I usually do. I'm having a little trouble here because I'm being goofy, but I eventually get it together and figure out a much smarter way to do this. They actually sell a Craig like 90-degree clamp that'll help you with this, but this got the job done. Now I was ready to go ahead and cut all the shelves, and again, since I was using just stock 12-inch wood, all I had to do was cut the shelves to the correct length. And the easiest way I found to do that was to cut one and then stack them on each other and make sure they're flush against each other, and cut the remaining shelves that way. Time for some more pocket holes. Watch me do that. Now the shelves go on just as you'd expect. This bottom shelf I glued on there, and that was to keep those bottom supports flush with the edge of that bottom shelf. That way it didn't have any bowing or anything like that. It would be solid piece. And then I just clamp that down and wait for it to dry, and then I can go ahead and put the next shelves on. To help place the remaining shelves, I had 2 5-inch spacer blocks that I used to space it out and make sure everything was level and even. And then I just pocket screwed those in there and repeated the process for the next shelf. And so that made 2 5-inch spaces, and then the top shelf was just a little over 5 inches, but it was close enough where it didn't really matter. And of course all this had to be repeated for the opposite side, just making sure that the 20-inch support is on the correct side. And here I am testing it out. It looks like it's gonna work, but I was worried about how big the middle section looked. Now it was time to get rid of the old stuff so I could bring the new stuff in. Next I got a 2x4 sheet of plywood and I cut out my back support, the green piece you see there. And I put pocket holes in it and attached it. And you can see I have that clamp I was talking about earlier in the video. Then I stained the bench top with some Minwax English chestnut, and that had a nice dark look, and I just wiped it on with a rag, let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then wiped it off. 2 coats of spray-on poly for protection. And finally I prepared the front-facing pieces that attach the 2 sections of my piece. I used pocket screws to attach the bench top, and I nailed in the front-facing pieces. I didn't get video of me making the lid top for the storage bin, but it was pretty easy. I just cut the board to the correct length, and then on the bottom side I cut a small piece that could act as a lip that would hold it in place when you put the board on. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Have a good one.